your follower count has no algorithmic bearing on TikTok at all. And I think that that's really interesting. Now, granted, does having a following help with some of that initial engagement? Sure. But like follower count as a metric in and of itself does not influence the algorithm, which I think is really, really interesting. And it gives a little bit of an open door to new creators to come in and kick down the door and put something out there that's cool, that people will like, that's theirs, that, you know, feels on brand and right for them as an artist or a creator. And they can make a splash. We're still in that territory to be able to do that. So I think that's important for artists to know.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast, brought to you by IndiePRO.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 217. We're going to be talking all about the inner workings of TikTok today, and I'm super excited about this episode. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me, as always, is your co-pilot, co-host, Ed Isola. Ed, what is up, my friend? I hope you're excited to talk about TikTok as much as I am.
I am. I mean, I feel like I'm excited to get into it because it's something that I feel like we've this week you and I went and we read these articles to kind of get more informed, but a lot of it is stuff that we've discovered via testing. So it's kind of cool to talk about what these articles have said and what other people have found, and then compare that to our like firsthand experiences. It's actually pretty interesting what's the same and what's different. So it should be a lot of really good insight for you guys on the hot topic of the day, TikTok.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. A lot of the research that we did ahead of this episode was really interesting, and there's a lot of cool stuff that came out of it. And I think a lot of the questions that we're going to go over, you know, kind of while we're chatting here today are things that a lot of musicians have kind of ringing around in their heads. And I sort of want to preface this episode by saying our goal here isn't necessarily to teach anyone how to algorithm hack, right? Or hack the TikTok algorithm no differently than I would ever recommend somebody chase after hacking the Instagram algorithm or Facebook or any social platform, really. Only because I think that that's to some degree a bit of a fool's errand, because algorithms can change overnight, and all of a sudden all the things that you thought were your foolproof strategies or tactics no longer work. That said, TikTok is a hot topic, and it's a great platform for music discovery. I don't think we're saying anything new by saying that, but there's still a lot of mystery behind it. It's in a lot of ways still a blue ocean, still relatively underutilized by a lot of artists, and there's a lot of stuff to know about it. And I think that there's some cool opportunity here to kind of take away some of the mystique behind TikTok and how it works and why it works so well, even for artists that are just getting on the platform for the very first time. And we'll get into that in a little bit here. But to kind of kick things off, what's pretty cool about this is back towards the end of the year, in December of 2021, the New York Times actually published an article that was called "How TikTok Reads Your Mind." Big, scary article headline. And it was a really, really fascinating article that kind of detailed inside information that they had gotten from an internal document that TikTok had, which was called "How the TikTok Algo Works," I believe it was called, or TikTok Algo 101 was what it was called. And it kind of walked through how TikTok ranks content and then recommends it in feed to users. And there was a lot of stuff in there, like you were saying, Ed, that was kind of intuitive and things that we've learned through testing on the platform, through consulting artists and making content recommendations for strategy. And I think a lot of the stuff that kind of came out of reading this New York Times article and then digging in a little bit further into what the internal TikTok document had to say across other media sources, it was telling. Is there anywhere in particular that you'd like to start off, man? I know that there was a few ideas. I'd love to talk about like just what TikTok defines as its goals with the algorithm, and also what it kind of assigns quality to in terms of content.
Yeah. We can start there. The one thing I want to add is, like, if you guys read through this article, which I'm sure we'll link, I thought it was very interesting that there's this like mathematic-esque formula in terms of like, here's the things that you actually need to be concerned about. And I'm sure we'll get into that more, but I hadn't really thought about it that specifically of like, A plus B plus C plus D equals, these are the things to care about. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, we could jump off with those couple things. I think that'll be solid.
That's a great jumping off point, I think. So the article from the New York Times actually kind of gives out a rough equation of how TikTok assigns value to content. And they lay out in the article that, this isn't a perfect equation like laid out. It's oversimplified essentially. But what it breaks down to is it breaks down what kind of engagement TikTok looks at in a video when assigning value. And it assigns those engagements based on the goals of the TikTok algorithm. And I thought this was really interesting. The TikTok algorithm essentially has 4 main goals. And those goals are user value, long-term user value, creator value, and platform value. And what those mean is user value is providing value to the platform's users. Long-term user value, and this one's really interesting, is keeping people coming back to TikTok and kind of getting into that doom scrolling sort of habit that TikTok is known to have. I certainly experienced that myself. Like you'll find yourself sitting on the couch and just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. I don't know if you feel the same way, Ed, but it was really interesting. As soon as I read that, I was like, oh, I mean, it totally makes sense that they're trying to retain people as one of the goals of this algorithm, this, essentially the machine learning, the math equations going on behind the platform.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense because I sometimes have to put my phone away because I'll, in the middle of the day, start looking at TikTok and it's like, 30 minutes has gone by. So it's like, yeah, you spend a lot of time on there and it's pretty impressive how dialed in it is in terms of like, if you watch one Star Wars video, then you see another one. If you watch 10 of them, your whole feed's now Star Wars theories. It's crazy, but it's cool to see that.
How did you pick out my TikTok feed? Right there.
It's mine as well. So it's like, but it's cool because you do that and it's like whatever it is. I know other people who it's like clothing or music or fitness or whatever you're watching. It's like this whole behind the scenes formula plays into what's going on your feed. And like you said, it's not like, hey, here's how you hack it, but it's like, here's how you're aware of this is how TikTok's operating. And if you know that they're going after, likes, comments, play times, and then if it's being played, those are the 4 things to like kind of tailor your content to help yourself get more reach.
Right, exactly. And that's exactly what TikTok is aiming to do is like it's looking for content that optimizes for those things to then pull people back into the platform. And that's where that sort of long-term user value goal comes from. So those are the first 2 goals of the algorithm. And then the second 2 are creator value. That's giving value to creators on the platform. So people who are actually making content. And then for platform value, that's using the algorithm to improve the TikTok app. So those are the 4 goals of what the algorithm is trying to do. And so you can kind of understand based on those what this value equation that we're going to go into sort of focuses on. And Ed teased it out a little bit. Roughly what it's looking for is when TikTok judges content or recommends content, it's looking for a combination of comments, likes as like, straight engagement. And then it's also looking at the watch time on a video and whether a video is actually watched instead of skipped over. And I think that those are really, really important to know when it comes to creating your content and what that might look like for trying to garner that kind of engagement, what you can do. And we're going to get into that kind of like the practical stuff in a second here, just to dive into how that all works and, what you can think about when you're actually sitting down to storyboard. But there's a couple pieces of this that I wanted to dive into because I also think they're especially important for musicians to know is when you're creating content on the platform. Another thing that TikTok is kind of judging on at a high level is like what it's calling the creation quality. That's the quality of the content itself. And this is really interesting because what it judges as quality versus what it doesn't really look for or judge content based on, I think is pretty fascinating. And there's definitely an element to this that is different from other social platforms. One of which is, first off, it judges content by the publish rate. How often, how frequently are you posting content? I think that's really interesting because oftentimes with like top TikTok accounts or TikTok accounts where you find that content is getting regularly recommended to you and put on your For You page, it's oftentimes stuff that you're seeing, creators share on a very regular, frequent basis. So that's one piece that it looks at when it comes to quality content. The second is actual creator retention. And this is a good one for musicians to know, I think, because it kind of comes back to your brand. Creator retention is the idea of someone sees your piece of content and then they click through and go to your profile and then consume more. So those first two, I find those to be really interesting and intrinsically linked, because like anything else, like we talk about running ads, for example, we say like if you're running ads and you want someone to come back to your Facebook page or your Instagram profile or whatever, you don't want it to be a ghost town. The same thing kind of applies here with TikTok. If someone is clicking back to your profile after viewing a piece of content that was recommended to them, you don't want them to go back to a ghost town or content that doesn't look like what they just experienced, or a page that has absolutely nothing on it or nothing happening. And I think that that's really important to know. I'm curious on your take on this, Ed, because I know you feel that there's like a happy medium between overposting and really trying to lock in with the algorithm and kind of make it work.
Yeah. I wrote a couple notes down as you were talking that I think kind of flow off of that. The first thing is like the cohesive content on your page. Like you were saying, if somebody watches your video and then they go to your profile or your page or whatever, having content on there that's similar, I've found for myself and for a couple other artists, that goes a long way. Where if like somebody sees a video and it's of you doing a great vocal take, when they go to your page, if there's a bunch of other videos of you doing great vocal takes, they'll watch them. And I've done that as a user too. And I've just gone and scrolled through all these videos versus one video is a great vocal take. The next one is, I don't know, your trip to the grocery store, or like totally unrelated things. I think that's a really, really important thing that's kind of, that I've observed is now being kind of presented in these articles we're reading, is that you want to be cohesive in that front so that people are getting the same thing. Like Jack said, you want them to go, you want them to hang out on your page. And the easiest way to do that is to say, as a musician, I'm posting music related stuff, not necessarily lifestyle. And that's something I've intentionally tried to steer clear of on our page. And so I think that's a good takeaway. The other thing, obviously, like this is same feature on Facebook and that kind of stuff, but you can pin posts on your TikTok profile. So if you have a couple really good performing ones, pin those to the top of your grid. I think that's a great comment. And then regarding, like you said, the frequency of posting, I was, for a very long time, I was like, I'm going to post, on Tuesday. And then if it's going well, I'm not going to post again for 4 more days because I don't want it to cross itself. But one of the things that these articles made pretty clear was that TikTok doesn't show you the same video twice once it's been posted. Whether you watch it or you skip it, they won't put it on your feed twice. And I think that's really interesting because instead of saying, oh, if I have one video on Tuesday going really well, I'm kind of now in the mindset of like, you can post once a day or maybe even morning and night. It's judged basically off of how good the videos are, not how close together the videos are. So I'm not saying post one video every 5 minutes, but I think the frequency of posting is something you have to be less concerned with. Even when you come to like Instagram and that kind of stuff, it's like TikTok, the video is posted and it's gone. And if you log out of the app, you're not getting back to it. So I think that's a vote in favor of posting more frequently as opposed to less frequently. I think a couple times, a day max would probably be what I would do right now. And that's on the high end. It's also a vote in favor of saying, hey, you can post the same video multiple times because and that's something we've done where if you post this video on the first day of the month and then a month goes by and you post it on the first day of the next month, it's okay. Because it's not like it's populated in people's feeds 95 times. Like that at max would be 2 times in people's feeds. And I think that's a really kind of interesting observation that if you're looking at frequency and what content to post and when to post it are like really major key takeaways in my opinion.
No, that's a really good point. And I think something to add on to this is another thing that we kind of discovered in this algorithm research was TikTok doesn't necessarily give new content reach based on the performance of previous videos that the creator had posted. So it's looking for a strong publishing frequency and looking for you to create content on the platform and be using it. I think that part of that likely comes back to user retention, or rather long-term user value, keeping you as a creator on the platform, as well as keeping the users that are watching your content on the platform. But it is interesting that, like, you know, your TikTok from last week, maybe it didn't perform super well. That may not have an impact at all on, you know, your viral one that could pop off tomorrow if you post it. So I think that's really, really interesting. I think there's another point to be made here about like the quality of your content in terms of consistency, like you were saying, Ed. Like, it's not unlike people going and, you know, binging Netflix. We've used that analogy plenty when it comes to content in general. But like when someone comes and discovers who you are through a piece of content, and then they have a backlog to go into and dig further, I think that there's a good reason that that's included in like TikTok's kind of algorithmic weight towards how they weigh content and how they weigh creators, because it does really add into, well, for one, it sucks people in, right? Like if they've got content to binge, like let's say, for example, you've posted like a narrative arc for your upcoming single release and you've been hyping it up. Maybe you've got countdown videos. Maybe you have videos around asking people to save the song, to stream the song when it drops, to sign up for your email list. And it's kind of following this narrative arc or a story. If someone, you know, comes in the middle through a piece of content that goes well and they are served, they'll go back and they'll click through to your profile and go back and watch the rest of it. You know, they might start from the beginning and be like, who is this artist all about? What is the story behind this thing that I'm kind of coming in at the middle at or the end at? Or they'll continue to follow if they're coming in at the beginning, they'll continue to follow as you post more content. And that helps with that long-term user value. It keeps them coming back to the platform. So it's really, really interesting. Like, I think that definitely ties into a content strategy of consistency. So that's really, really important. I also think that allows you to have, you know, in that consistency, have some diversity of content as well. So striking a balance between, you know, posting the same video too many times versus, you know, stretching it out and chopping it up and adding different headlines or captions or front caps. We've talked about that in previous episodes. And I think that that's important for people to think about.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think that, like, spinning off of that, as we just went through the formula for like a last thought, and this is probably going to kind of segue us into a little bit of best practices and that kind of stuff. The formula, like you said, the formula was likes, comments, watch time on a video, and whether the video is played. And it's really interesting to me that is the way that it's presented, because I actually looked at that and thought, look at it from the reverse order, and it's literally the things for how we kind of quantify if a fan finder is doing well, right? Like whether a video is played, that would be the pattern interrupt of like, here is the first 3 seconds. Does somebody stop to watch this video? Watch time. You're looking at like the 75% video view. In this case, probably is somebody watching my 15-second clip. And then comments and likes are just measuring engagement. So it's like you get this whole article and it kind of boils back down to have a good pattern interrupt, have a good video that keeps people through for a majority of the video, and then you want people to like and comment on it, which will naturally happen if they're stopping and watching and the content's good. So I just thought that was really interesting when you were talking about the formula, and it's like, this is literally the fan finder just reversed how they presented it, which was pretty cool.
No, that's so interesting. Like, that really is, there's nothing shocking about this, right? Like, the article from the New York Times was like, it was called How TikTok Reads Your Mind. But there's nothing really shocking about the equation of how it ranks content or recommends content. It's just looking for, did someone play a video? If yes, how much time did they spend watching that video? And did they engage with it? Like in the form of a comment or a like. That's not rocket science or anything like any sorcery or, you know, anything really dark or sinister at all. It's really just how social engagement goes on any platform. But that's a really interesting and good point. I totally agree with you. Something else that I wanted to mention is in determining quality content, another piece of the puzzle that the TikTok algorithm looks at is what they call creator monetization. And that doesn't necessarily mean, are you actually making money on the platform right now? So I don't want to scare anybody off by saying that. But what it really looks to mean is like, are you using monetization features? Is your profile set up for monetization? Are you going live on TikTok? Are you actively using the features that TikTok gives creators to try to encourage engagement? And we'll get into that in a second here about like garnering engagement. But I think that that's an important point to make as we kind of dive into this, because like you said, Ed, like one of the main points, and I think I've seen this play out in my TikTok usage, that one of the big things that the platform really does look for is it relies on that watch time to steer you more videos that are like the ones that you want to see. One of the big things that was kind of confirmed by the research that we did on this point was that it's using watch time and these other value equation variables to determine content to recommend to people. But then TikTok's then not going and serving people constantly the same type of content over and over and over again. It's weighing a balance between the type of content that they like and the type of content that they're continuing to discover, so that there's a level of diversity going on in what you're getting served. And then that goes back to keeping people on the platform longer. So there's some level of diversity to keep them scrolling so that they don't get bored seeing the same thing over and over and over again. And I thought that that was really, really interesting.
I mean, it's really cool because I think where that opens the door for us as independent musicians is like, it's going to keep giving you different stuff, right? So if you just keep coming up with good videos, you'll keep being presented to people. And that's something I've experienced firsthand, but it's like, it's just like, if you know the rules of the game on TikTok, it almost feels very much like you can get a good following. And that's why I feel like you see people like Tai Verdes, who has 6 different songs that are viral on TikTok. All his videos are the same, right? Like they're largely the same. Him in his car and all those things have kind of gone viral, but he figured out for him, hey, people like this. I'm going to go ahead and do this. And look, guess what? It works, right? I think Nic D is the guy's name. He has the same thing. He has a bunch of different successful viral songs, and he makes similar content for all of them. So it's kind of like this thing of, if you have good music, which I feel like a lot of indies do, understanding and going through the testing process of what content's working for you. And then once you figure out what's working, recreating it in not identical ways, but familiar ways, it opens up the world on TikTok, which opens up a lot of different doors for you. I don't know. I just find that really encouraging, honestly. It's like you can get very far knowing what works for you and having good music on TikTok.
No, that's a good point. And we'll link to those 2 artists in the show notes so that you guys can check them out and kind of get some inspo from some of the stuff that they're doing. One other thing that I want to mention before we get into like some of the practicals here and kind of out of the algorithmic theory is something that I think a lot of indies worry about is, there's so many people with massive fan bases on TikTok, tons of followers right now, and I'm too late, right? I can't get into the game. I won't get favored by the algorithm. But here's something that's really interesting is that your follower count has no algorithmic bearing on TikTok at all. And I think that that's really interesting. Now, granted, does having a following help with some of that initial engagement? Sure. But like follower count as a metric in and of itself does not influence the algorithm, which I think is really, really interesting. And it gives a little bit of an open door to new creators to come in and kick down the door and put something out there that's cool, that people will like, that's theirs, that, feels on brand and right for them as an artist or a creator. And they can make a splash. We're still in that territory to be able to do that. So I think that's important for artists to know. And like I said, like it also isn't necessarily looking for the performance of your previous video to help you get your upcoming one or the one you're just about to release ranked or recommended a specific way. So those 2 things are important to know. They don't necessarily have a bearing in the way that some indies, I think, fear. So that's really cool. That's an interesting point. But I want to dive into like, what does this mean practically when you're thinking about a content strategy? Obviously, like we've danced around it a little bit. We've talked about like, spinning a narrative arc and making sure that you are posting stuff that's consistent and you're posting frequently and stuff is on brand and you don't have a ghost town of a profile. All of those things are definitely important for what we understand to be how the TikTok algorithm acts and how it recommends videos. But I think there are specific things that we can get into about videos to garner that watch time, to garner likes and comments, and really get people engaging. And I know that this was the thing that you were probably most excited to talk about today, Ed. So I'll let you take the wheel here and kick it off.
Dude, absolutely. And first, just to circle back, like how encouraging is it as an independent musician that your follower count does not matter, essentially. That's just such a good thing. And like, to know that, hey, if I go out and I make a great content piece and it really resonates with everybody, that's going to be better than somebody making a subpar content piece with 500,000 followers, which typically is the case on like all platforms, right? So I feel like that's just such an encouraging thing. But yes, getting into the actual practical working knowledge of like what I took away from reading these articles crossed with what I've seen work across a bunch of different accounts. There's a lot of things that we've probably said on here that I'm just going to quickly repeat for you guys that I feel like are like the things to write down. One, have a great pattern interrupt, get people's attention early on. To me, that's always means some kind of great singing or instrumentation or lyric. Those three things tend to stop people musically, I think. So that's a cool way to do it. You also see people opening their videos if they're like at a piano or something, being like, hey guys, like I wrote this song about blah, 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 and they start playing. That's a pattern interrupt too. It's kind of less talent based and more, spoken copy based, but that works as well.
Narrative, yeah.
Yeah. So having that in there, and then the second thing that somebody wrote was have an engaging caption, which like take your fan finder caption, have high quality videos, which we've already touched on, and then hashtags, which I think I've said this before, but the hashtags that I use, if you go look at any 502's video, are hashtag FYP, hashtag For You page, and hashtag original music. I use those three, covers our bases. There are things like rap and pop music that you could use if you're that genre. But those four things to me are like the key takeaways. And Jack, I'll let you weigh in on this in 1 second. The one thing that all these different articles said, like how does a musician get followers? How does a musician get followers? I'm very steady on saying post your music content, make it about your music, make it about your songs, do that. All these articles mentioned use trending sounds to get views and to get followers. To me, that doesn't make sense because we just talked about how they also said follower count doesn't matter, right? If you're making great content, it's going to be circulated widely regardless of your follower count. So the whole using the trending sounds thing is, I think, something I would recommend you to stay away from, because my understanding is that if you're using a trending sound, like you're probably doing some kind of dance or some kind of trend to it, and why that might go viral and get you followers. That gets back to contradicting what we just talked about. Like if you go viral for doing some comedy skit to a trending sound or whatever, people go back to your page and it's all music, they may not care. Like you want to go viral for the right reason. And so that's why I'm kind of like saying, don't rely on, I don't want to call it a gimmick, but don't rely on, as a musician, a other artist trending sound as the way to get your followers and to build your base. I think going with your own original music is like the better path there in the long term.
I think there are enough things trending that you don't need to necessarily rely on trending sounds. I hate to be one way about it, but I think you're right, Ed, that like in terms of trying to build a brand for yourself as an artist and build a following for yourself as an artist. I mean, this is the same reason that when TikTok first came out and started getting popular, artists were asking like, does that mean I have to dance? Like I don't want to be that. Well, I think you're right. In a lot of cases, like the trending sounds are, you'll find yourself relating to them in a way that's like, I have to create gimmicky content. And I think that there's probably ways to use that in sections of your video or, in front caps or end caps. And you can probably get creative in that front, but I don't think that it's the main thing that you need to focus on as an artist. I think there are other elements of your video that you should be paying attention to. You should absolutely be paying attention to the caption, like you said, Ed, taking your copy that's going to stop people from scrolling, mid-scroll. I think that's so important on TikTok. Take the ad copy that you would usually use in a Facebook post that would catch somebody's attention, for example, your fan finder style catchy ad copy where you're asking a question or really provoking someone to stop and watch and kind of do a double take and be like, what are they talking about? And, just to recap, like we talk about this plenty on the show, but to give a silly example, you might see a video that has a caption that's like, most fire rap video of summer 2022, like that kind of thing. Those kinds of scroll stoppers. That was a cheesy example, but that's the kind of thing that you can play off of your lyrics and you can play off of your content to make that kind of stuff and actually have it on the video itself. not just in the post copy. That's really, really important. Introducing characters into or elements into your video midway through. Something that you see a lot of with TikTok creators is like, especially with like trending sound type videos where it's kind of gimmicky reveals at the end. And I'm not trying to like shade any of that, but you can learn from this stuff. Like you might have a video where you are performing a song and at the very, very last second of the video before it loops, your drummer comes into frame or something like that, or a drum hit happens for the very first time. I don't know. I'm just spitballing ideas here. But those are the kinds of things that, like, if you introduce a character or an element, for example, that makes people want to stop and see what that is, that encourages looping of the video, which then increases the watch time. So that kind of thing is really cool. Something else that you see a lot of for helping with the actual rate of viewing and the number of people that are watching is long captions. I've been seeing a lot of this recently, is long captions on the video itself that people have to read while they're watching the video. And oftentimes they don't get through it before it cuts to the next frame. So then they come back and watch it again. It's kind of gimmicky, but I think it can work well if it's on brand to you and not just like BS that you're spewing on your video.
But on that note, I think that that's a really, really good tactic. And I actually, if you guys are listening and you're familiar with Mount Joy, they're a pretty big indie folk band. They probably do a couple thousand individual venues and got probably 2 or 3 million monthly listeners on Spotify, like big artist, but their TikTok is just starting off. And so I've been following it, and they just had, I think, their first video that they posted that got like, 100,000 views or something. There's one on there that has like 1 million, but it kind of looks like that was maybe paid advertising, but this one got 100K views organically. And they have a song that has, 20 million streams or whatever, 30, 40 million, I don't know, a lot of streams. And it's just the singer kind of sitting there playing it acoustically. And on the screen, like Jack was saying, he says, "Hey, my name is so-and-so from Mount Joy. This is all in text. I wrote this song, blah, blah, blah. And like, it's been crazy what it's done. And this kind of encapsulates us as a band. And it's so cool to hear you guys sing." It's this whole narrative thing on the screen that you can't read immediately. You have to, it's a 7-second clip and you got to loop it. But it's this really cool idea that got me thinking like, hey, we could probably, and indies could probably spin this out into their own easy content of playing this song, put the text behind the song on the screen. It might catch on or something. And I think that is exactly what you were saying. That's another one to check out in terms of a good example for inspo, is putting this narrative language on the actual screen via text and using the on-screen captions.
Yeah, that's a great point. Mount Joy, we'll make sure to link to them in the show notes. Funny enough, my brother took a guitar lesson with their guitar player, I think, a couple years ago. I haven't thought about them since then, but that's pretty cool. I haven't looked at their TikTok, so I'll have to take a look. But those are just a couple things from like the engagement side that you can be considering. You mentioned hashtags. There's plenty of trending hashtags that you can try to use. I don't encourage people to lean on hashtags as like the bulletproof way of tickling the TikTok algorithm. There are no guarantees to any of that. There are no guarantees that using FYP or For You page as a hashtag is going to get you to show up there. It's one piece of the puzzle here of trying to garner some engagement. Something that can be useful is searching for the hashtags that some similar artists to you are using. That's definitely a kind of a cool tactic to tap into. And that's not unlike, recommendations that have been going on Instagram forever. But I would at least try that and include that, or at least include some of the usual suspects that Ed mentioned. Another thing that I think is important to talk about, and this kind of goes on the analytical side, is like the time of posting, using TikTok's analytics to learn about when your audience is active and when they're online, and using that to kind of guide you as to when you should be setting up your post. You can see, where your people are, where they're coming from, and the times that they're most active throughout the day. And then you can, basically set up your content calendar around that. I think that's a good thing to do. It's an easy sort of win to try and capture people's attention at the time where they're, on the platform the most.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny too, because you're like, I don't lean on the hashtags as like the end all be all. Nor do I. At this point, it feels like superstition to me that every viral video we've had has had those 3 hashtags. And so like me saying that is kind of like, hey, this has been good for us. And I just do it on every video. And I don't know if it actually has anything to do with it or if the content's just good. But like Jack said, that's probably a more realistic feature or action rather, to go see artists that you like and what they're using on their hashtags. it's probably going to be like pop music or For You page or something. But I think that is an actual good tip. I was going to say the time of posting has actually been the thing that I've played around with a good amount. And that's where I feel like you should create your video. And when you create it, make it off app. So, if you have your clip, if you go in and if you have an iPhone, if you go in and you create the lyrics on the actual TikTok editing app, and they're coming up on certain times and disappearing. If you go to the very last step and then you do the full screen preview and you screen record it, you'll actually be able to get the TikTok video with the captions, with the sound, all that stuff without any of the TikTok logo on it. So what I'll do when I make a TikTok is go in, put it exactly, edit it in TikTok the way I want, do this screen recording without the logo and save it. And then you can use that and put it in a folder and post it multiple times like I was talking about over months, but also try posting it at different times. Like sometimes for us, 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. Eastern works really well. Sometimes midnight works really well. Sometimes 7:45 in the morning works well. And so those are the times for us that I've seen our posts go viral. But I know other artists have had different experiences. So I think the comment there is like, create your TikToks, save them, and don't be afraid to post them and try them. The other great thing is you don't actually ever have to delete a TikTok unless you want to. If you post the TikTok at 7 a.m. and it doesn't get enough views and you're like, hey, I want to try to post it at 7 p.m. tonight. You just go into your app, click on the settings at the very bottom, scroll, I think, all the way to the right. It'll say ad settings. And on ad settings, you just click only shows an ad. It will disappear from your feed. So you won't have 7 of the same video posted on there. And you can toggle that on and off. So that's kind of just a comment on how to test what time's good for you and how to have content so you're not sitting there, if you want to post the same video, spending 45 minutes making it multiple times.
That's a really good point. And I kind of want to recap here to close off this episode and say that again, like, we got kind of nerdy a bit with how the algorithm works and the things that it looks for. And again, I hope that we weren't in any way coming across saying like, if you do these things just right, you'll hack the algorithm and it'll work out perfectly for you. Because I don't think that any of that is the case. Even in the TikTok Algo 101 doc, TikTok's internal document, they said like, this equation is an oversimplification of how the recommendation setup on TikTok works. But going back to what you said, Ed, and this is what I wanted to recap, is when you're thinking about creating content for TikTok, think about the things that the TikTok algorithm is trying to do. It's trying to get users to engage with content. It's trying to keep them on the platform and coming back to the platform. It's trying to bring value to the creators. So it's trying to get people to come over to your profile and engage with more videos, follow you, so on and so forth. And it's trying to create, a better app, essentially make TikTok better. And that happens by more users being on it and more users interacting with content. So, and as data builds up, that also helps the app as well. So think about all of those goals that what TikTok's algorithm is really trying to do. And then think about that kind of content psychology that's going on. What are the main kind of pieces of the value equation? Is someone watching the video? How long are they watching it for? Are they commenting and liking it? Keep those in mind, and then go zoom out a little bit more to the creator level and think about how often am I publishing content? Am I being active enough that this could help me algorithmically, however little or much it might? Are you a ghost town? Is there a level of retention that people can have when they go over? Will they want to consume more of your content, or will it just be like, oh, where the heck did I just land? And are you using the features that TikTok has in place to help you grow? I think those are kind of like the main things to consider. And you can kind of use that to create really cool content that feels like it's right for you and your music. Lean on, like Ed was saying, lean on your music to be, kind of the core of what you're trying to do. I definitely think that that's important. I personally go back and forth about that a lot, but I think that is important. And you can do it in a way that has a narrative and that you don't get bored making the content. But I think that, keeping these sort of puzzle pieces in mind hopefully allows you to roadmap out what your content can do.
Well said. And hopefully that's a helpful kind of wrap on TikTok. And it was not just Jack and I kind of going based off theories. It was a bunch of different people online kind of echoing the same sentiments and us kind of justifying those with what we've seen. So it's an exciting time, and it's I don't know, it's just crazy to go through reading all these other people's findings, and it's like, oh, so fan finder, right? Like 15 seconds of a fan finder. Sounds good.
Yeah, that's a great way to cap off. And hopefully, yeah, like Ed said, this kind of demystifies a little bit of what's going on inside of TikTok for you guys, and gets you excited to try to create some stuff that's cool and accomplishes these goals for the algorithm and helps you get some new fans in the process. So dig into it. We'll see you guys next time on Creative Juice. Peace out, Indies.
Can y'all really feel the East Coast, feel the West Coast, feel